Hello, welcome to the Unverified channel. I'm your host Israel, also known as I or Malade, and I have some new content for the Unverified channel. Finally, you've been waiting for this for a long amount of time, and hopefully this doesn't crash and burn. So if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe. And I know you might not hear that at the beginning of the video, but I'm gonna have to do that because I really love this idea and I would love to keep doing it, considering that Simi or Tamago2474 has loaned me his camera, and yeah, I would like to continue the series. So, anyways. And you may be wondering, what is Backseat Gaming Reviews? What are you talking about, Israel? What is this stupid idea you have? Okay, Backseat Gaming Reviews is a video series in which we review video games that we have never played before and we've only seen via YouTube or Twitch Let's Plays or playthroughs, basically. So this is the series idea that I have for Unverified. As someone who has neither the time or money to play video games, this series makes so much sense to me. Especially because I'm subscribed to over 100 YouTube channels, if you did not know that already. Video games are a medium that heavily relies on sound and sight, which can both be very easily replicated by a YouTube video. There's also touch, but we're probably not going to count that. We're just going to ignore that for now if you really care about your controller vibrations, or you care about the feel of the sticks. I don't know, man. I know what you get off to. So, to summarize, this series is essentially a hot take, so hopefully it's not controversial. It probably helps that I explain to you the rating system as well before we get into the main meat of the video, the review obviously, but because I hate doing ratings out of 10, the rating system is not going to be out of 10 or grades A, B, C, D. No, the rating system is completely nonsensical, and hopefully the guys agree with me with this nonsensical rating system. What we're going to have is points. So for every aspect of a video game I point out, I will either give it a positive point or a negative point, and that will constitute the rating. Essentially, what I believe is that art is limitless, and so therefore we have a score of no limits. There is no limits to this score. As for which aspect of a video game constitutes its points, or at least the number of points, is entirely dependent on myself, the reviewer. Because as you may know by now, reviews are completely biased and subjective. They should not be taken for any objective reason. Because you're not necessarily here to find out my objective reason of the game. You actually find out is my subjective reason for a video game I have never played. Clearly, this is going to be double controversial. But I'm not done yet. Hopefully, via editing magic, our editor can showcase the game that we're reviewing today where my TV screen is. I hope you see the vision here. I hope you see the vision. Do you see the vision? Do you see how goated and genius I am? Do you see this? So yes, today we'll be reviewing Last of Us Part 2. So now, to preface with a few things before I start with Last of Us 2, like I told you, I'm not done yet with this series being very controversial because I started with Last of Us 2, the most controversial series of all. Please tell me there's no hate in the comments. Please? Now, there are a few things I should preface in this review that will definitely affect my opinion on this review, essentially. To explain to you, I have never watched nor played Last of Us Part 1, so I know nothing about Last of Us Part 1 besides of a few small details of the game. I know roughly what happens in that game, but I don't know everything that happens in that game because I've not seen it. You know, also another thing I should also point out, I don't think you can see it, and or maybe if you're someone who's looking at the bottom, somewhat at the bottom left corner of your screen, or the bottom right corner if this is flipped for some weird reason, you can see a bit of green. If you've noticed, if you don't know, I'm an Xbox player. So hopefully, what you should know by now from this review, Halo better, Halo better, Halo better, Halo better, fell off, PlayStation fell off, PlayStation fell off, Halo better. With Last of Us Part 2, or with Last of Us being a very narrative-driven game, hopefully it shouldn't be too controversial in the sense of what I complain about, because it's a story-driven game and you can kind of critique the game pretty easily, honestly, without needing to play it. So now, obviously, I didn't play Last of Us Part 2, so we instead did pull footage from our resident Game Boy, Tamago2474, and we pulled the footage from one of his live streams back last year. So he's going to be our gamer for today. So for this review, I'm going to separate this review into 5 sections. We're going to be talking about writing, gameplay, art design and animation, music/sound, and anything miscellaneous that I wanted to add, essentially. So here we are. So now let's start off with the number 1 section that Last of Us is strong for, writing. In order to not drag out this review, The Last of Us Part 2 is a 24-hour long game and the story is long. I'm not gonna lie to you. So instead of trying to explain the entire plot to you, I'm just going to summarize to the best of my abilities. The Last of Us Part 2 is set in the post-apocalyptic northeast of the United States of America. And basically, zombies, if you didn't know, zombies are a thing. They kind of look weird. Basically, zombies are a thing. And Last of Us 2 essentially takes place where Last of Us Part 1 had finished. Essentially. If you didn't know by now, spoiler alert! The main story of Last of Us Part 2 essentially revolves around our main character Ellie getting revenge on her father figure Joel by killing Abby, who we later find out was getting revenge on her own father figure, who we later find out was killed by Joel in the first game. This is where we start my problems with the game so far. For a revenge plot, the game is too long. Last of Us 2 Part 2 is 24 hours long. That's 24 hours of playing time. That's a whole day I could be spending watching YouTube videos, or a whole day I could be spending going on a jog, or a whole day exercising, or a whole day doing something else productive than trying to play a video game. So -4 points. Because I feel like personally, there are some parts of the game that could have been cut out, in which I will get to it. So we're not off to a strong start here. So my opinions of the story of Last of Us Part 2 are extremely mixed, to say the least. On one hand, I kind of like the story, but not for the reasons you think I like the story. I like the story for very stupid reasons that you really shouldn't like a story, because most of it is just me laughing at how bold they were to do some of the decisions they did. And that's why sometimes I find some decisions funny. So a good example of this is Joel's death. Spoiler alert! Joel's death, at least to me, seemed like a very obvious attempt at shocking the audience who very much cared when they played as Joel in the first game.
Abby, Joel, listen. Please get up!
You know, the audience feels for Joel, and they also care about his relationship with Ellie as well. So obviously, the game's going to do that in an attempt to shock the audience, and they do it by doing it in the most disrespectful manner I've ever seen. It is absurd how disrespectful, and that's why I give it 1 point, because it's so silly. It reminds me of the time. It just reminds me of the time where Trevor in GTA 5 beats the shit out of Johnny when we're first introduced to him. So the whole crux of Joel's death is so that we end up playing as Ellie, our main character, at least for now. And so what we're having to deal with is having Ellie having to come to terms with the fact that Joel has passed, and her trying to handle it, or not handling it very well. And obviously, it's understandable that Ellie probably wanted to get revenge on Joel. It's made very clear that it seems to be the reason Ellie is doing this because she feels like if that happened to her, Joel would do the same thing. So clearly, having been raised by the man, she's going to do the thing that, he would have done for her. However, I have a problem with this because it's okay. Yeah, it isn't, to me, it isn't okay until we find out that Dina is pregnant and then Jesse gets involved. So now we've got a bunch of characters now involved with Ellie's revenge plan. The danger is never really addressed by the game, except from Tommy at one point in the beginning of the game. When it is addressed, Ellie just disagrees. Ellie just simply straight out ignores everyone and just does the thing, and then no one calls her out afterwards. Ellie doesn't get called out on her behavior until the end of the game, until it's too late. And so for this reason, I'm going to give it just 1 point. Now my comments may have seemed overwhelmingly negative. I think I was going to give it 3 points for the way I liked how Ellie was coping with it and how she was feeling, how she was with all the trauma she was facing. We have her hand shaking at one point in the game. And also the fact that Ellie couldn't sleep nearby the end of the game. So to me, it was interesting to see Ellie deal with the trauma of watching Joel literally get beaten to shit with a golf club. Yeah, I don't think Ellie's a fan of Tiger Woods. So for that reason, I have to give it at least 1 point, but I had to take all those points away. And as I mentioned before, I mentioned that Ellie's feelings towards getting her revenge was because Joel would have done the same. I felt like her character was feeling very hamstrung by that idea, because it almost made her super crazy for no reason. It made her, to me, it made Ellie completely unlikable. And I get what they were trying to do, because, Ellie's relationship with Joel had already been shaky in the beginning of part 2, mostly because we find out later in a flashback that Ellie actually finds out what Joel did to the Firefly and the Doctor, who was going to come up with the vaccine by using Ellie. It seemed less like Ellie was trying to get revenge on Joel, but actually it turns out Ellie was in fact trying to come to terms with Joel being gone and trying to deal with the fact that, like, oh, our relationship ended on bad terms. You know, I said I never wanted to see him again. I never wanted to be involved with him. It ended negatively, and it seems like she is very hung up on that throughout the entire game, rather than the fact Joel was actually dead. It felt like Ellie was more angry at Abby for taking away the opportunity for her to go back in good terms with Joel again, or forgive him again. Because essentially, when Joel dies, Joel essentially dies believing that Ellie hasn't forgiven him, essentially. At least that's what it seems to be from Ellie's perspective. And now, in concept, this is a very good idea, but no one else seems to realize this or even point it out. So to me, it just seems like Ellie is left to deal with it on her own. Not only does anyone support her, no one really challenges her either. So clearly, it just seems like either everyone is on board with it or just doesn't give a shit. And so it just makes it seem like everyone is there to bow down or bend down to Ellie's wishes, essentially. No one really physically tries to stop Ellie. She's just gonna do whatever she wants. And it's even harder to believe when you have Dina, who is pregnant and can barely physically move properly. And that's why I'm gonna have to give it -2 points. But speaking of pregnant Dina, there was also another pregnant character in the game called Mel.
Duty. Clearly.
Wait, so we're expecting a pregnant lady to do all this? I don't know, man. I don't know. Found the
Advantage of being pregnant. Low center of gravity.
What
Take
is
your
she
word for it.
doing? I'm not gonna lie, she's very brave.
I don't know why there's 2 pregnant women in this game being made to do a lot of physical activity. I don't get it. It seems very weird. I get that the idea is to show parallels between Ellie's group and Abby's group. I just think it just seems really strange to just have 2 pregnant women. I guess it makes sense to have 2 pregnant women in a post-apocalyptic setting, but it's just a bit odd that it's just, oh, okay, we have 2 of them. There's just 1 in each group. It just seems weird to me. No points. Now, speaking of Mel, at some point, we find out Mel's pregnant. So the way we find out that Mel is pregnant is that we find out from when Ellie shoots Mel and kills her, as well as killing Owen as well. Eventually, Tommy finds Ellie in the aquarium where she shot the 2 and takes her back. And so they eventually go back to the theater that her and Dina were staying in. And it turns out Abby had tracked Ellie down because she had dropped a map. And she tracks Ellie down and finds her in the theater, and eventually she shoots Jesse, killing him. And she basically brutally maims the hell out of Tommy. And so then we have Abby pointing her gun at Ellie, and then the game fades to black. And then to which we find out we are now playing as Abby.
Playing as Abby. Okay.
Dad!
Alright. Alright, so now we're gonna understand her side of the story.
To most people, this was a terrible idea. No, I don't like that you're trying to make me sympathize with Abby. I don't want to sympathize with Abby, and I can understand why people felt that way. I don't care about Joel too much, so, for me, I don't really care that she killed Joel, but I can understand why the audience felt too strongly to Joel. I guess part 1 was really well written because people were really emotionally attached to Joel that they did not like Abby. So clearly, they care. I think I like the perspective from it. It's kind of ingenious because to me, I find it morbidly hilarious. The fact that they switched to Abby, the game basically forces you to play as the girl that you are looking to kill, and also the girl who killed the character that you really well loved in part 1. I think it's so. It's just so morbidly hilarious to go all the way to kill a person, and then boom, you're playing as the person that you were trying to kill because they killed someone. It's one of those decisions I think is morbidly hilarious, and that's why I give it 2 points. Maybe it's because I didn't play the first game, but I feel like the game does do a good job of getting you to care about Abby a little. So 1 point. Now, one of the things I really disliked about this game as well was the flashbacks. So throughout the game, there are multiple flashbacks. I don't know how many there are, but there should hopefully be a number on the screen, or maybe not. And honestly, I hated it, because it was so jarring having to switch back between the years, having to switch back between what day it is, having to switch back between different characters' backstories. To me, it just became annoying, and I was getting fed up with it. It was a very jarring experience playing the game. I get they're trying to provide us with context and stuff to some scenes, but my god was it annoying, and it also made the game a bit of a slog to watch. especially when I wanted to watch other YouTubers who played the game, it was a slog. It felt like the game was trying to still capture the audience, especially in Ellie's backstories. It felt like the game was trying to capture the audience that may have not wanted to continue because Joel's died, or they're sad that Joel died, and they're trying to, by having Joel in there, it will entice those people to keep playing the game because, oh, Joel's still in the game, remember him? We killed him, you know that. And that's why I give it -1 point. And another thing to add on by extending the game is also the parts with Yara and Lev. Now, I like Yara and Lev, but my god, their inclusion in the game extended the game way longer than it needed to be. And that's why it's 0 points. And now I should probably mention a little bit about Abby. Now, I really liked Abby, despite the fact that her and her ex-boyfriend did not really care about Mel, who is Owen's pregnant girlfriend. And it just seemed really odd. Like, it's not something that, Owen was trying his hardest to have both of them, whilst Abby was trying her hardest to stay away, and it's not like Abby really tries to apologize, or Abby feels any remorse for doing it in the first place. It's really strange. So I'm gonna just give it 1 point, maybe. Do not take that 1 point as me giving a point for cheating. No, I do not support cheating. I also have to give a game another point because Abby decks the hell out of Ellie. I don't know why. During their fights, during the end of the game, or at least the part which I thought was the end of the game, Abby decks the hell out of Ellie. Like, she pounds. Despite the writing being the strongest part of Last of Us Part 2, I really didn't care for the main plot. I honestly got so bored of the revenge plot. I actually found the beef between the Seraphites and the WLF to be more entertaining to see happen.
I agree, Kevin. I agree. I think I'm enjoying Abby more than Ellie. Yeah, her story is more interesting. Her character, arguably, is more interesting as well. I'm not gonna lie. It's it's pretty cool.
Another thing I was found interesting was Owen's want to go to Santa Barbara to go reform the Fireflies again, and I felt that was more interesting because it seemed like he wanted to get away from this WLF stuff. He didn't really care for the war between the Seraphites. He doesn't give a shit. It seemed realistic as someone who's in a zombie apocalypse to just get away from this stupid tribal bullshit. It seemed like he wanted to move away from that, and yeah. So 1 point. Now, after the game has had you as Abby beat the shit out of Ellie and Dina, we go to a time skip. And in that time skip, we find out that both Ellie and Dina are living together as a couple on a farm estate somewhere. As to what that farm does, I have no idea. Now, as far as I know, we're not really given any explanation as to why Dina and Ellie separate themselves from the rest of Jackson to go live on this farm. I have no idea why they've done it, and I don't know what they're contributing with this farm as well. So to me, I'm just gonna give that -1 point for just not telling us a thing that should feel like it should be told, especially because we have this gap in time that is very significant. Now, this final section of the game completely annoyed me because I would have been completely fine with a very peaceful ending with Ellie having failed to kill Abby and just having to accept that, she has a kid now and she's together with Dina and she's, ready to put it all past her despite having to still deal with the trauma, basically. That would have been a nice, completely peaceful ending, but instead, Naughty Dog chose violence. They said, nah, I'm gonna drag Ellie through thick and thin and the mud. We're about to drag this girl's character down the drain. So instead what we have is Ellie fails to kill Abby twice. I think this ruins Ellie as a protagonist because we basically have her go through this long journey where she attains a disgusting KD ratio, by the way, and she fails to kill the subjects of her revenge. She fails to kill them twice. It just makes her seem pathetic. She seems so pathetic. Personally, if I fail to get my revenge, I'm not gonna try and get another ass whooping. I'm not gonna try that. Why the hell would I want to do that? It doesn't help that Ellie clearly wanted to fight Abby instead of just shooting her or stabbing her, especially when Abby was very defenseless, stuck to a pole, basically being crucified. She was starving. She basically looks weak. Abby looks weakened enough that Ellie could just fucking poke her and she'd maybe die. Maybe not poke her, but Ellie basically had the ability to kill Abby there, and she didn't because she wanted to fight her because I guess she wanted to do the same that she did to Joel, essentially. So that's why I'm gonna give it -3 points. The Rallis are the most unrealistic group to exist in a zombie apocalypse setting, especially in a game that's known for its good story. because I feel like a group that's entirely hell-bent on being sadistic and torturing people and even, you know, using zombies as their playthings should not really last long in a zombie apocalypse at all. Also, they were late included to the game, and honestly, why should I care about them? They're not that threatening, they just look like psychopaths. Sorry, -2 points. Now, if you don't know who the Rattlers are a group that we find on Santa Barbara, on the island of Santa Barbara, of which they have captured Abby and Lev when they go over to Santa Barbara to go find the Fireflies. And also, Ellie goes to Santa Barbara because, you know, she's trying to chase Abby, so she knows Abby's there, and so she's gone to look for Abby. And the Rattlers are a group who seem to be on that island as well. Now later, after Ellie had failed to kill Abby a second time, she then decides to return back to the farm where her and Dina were staying, only to find Dina had basically left her.
That's
now,
it, you
to
can't
explain
come
this
back.
to you, Dina had basically told Ellie that if she goes to kill Abby, she's going to leave. They're
Exactly.
done. Their relationship
You
is
gotta
over,
stay,
okay?
Ellie.
Don't speak to my son again. I refuse to believe Ellie would sacrifice her whole future to go 1v1 this one girl who she already lost to the first time, and then challenges her again, only for her to give up when she could have won. It's like, damn, you did all of that. Was it really worth it? Was it really worth it in the end? Because this just really sucks for anyone who really likes Ellie or anyone who is rooting for Ellie in the game. -5 points. My god, Ellie just sucks. Ellie is terrible. Oh my, this game just like it shat on Ellie. Like it took a proverbial dump on her. Her character is gone. It's god. She even becomes more despicable because she then threatens she then tries to threaten Lev, and I'm like, okay, stop. She tries to threaten Lev's life to provoke an attack from Abby, and it's like, okay, you're evil. You're just evil. You're just an evil person. Jesus. I do find it moderately funny that Ellie cross-states to kill one person, killing a lot of people who are most likely uninvolved, and even sacrificing her future with her girlfriend and her child, only for her to fail twice. Now, not only that, she also lost her fingers, the ability for her to play the guitar at the same time. Now, whilst it looks like, you know, Abby lost all of her friends, she gained a new one. She gained a new friend in Lev. So it's like, okay, Ellie's all alone. Abby comes out of this successful, and she probably didn't kill anyone either. +4 points. +4 points. And that's it for the writing section. The Last of Us 2 essentially has you play as Ellie, Abby, and also Joel. The game essentially is basically you going from point A to B, with some quick time events happening as well, and also with some things interrupting you on your way, such as maybe a group of zombies, maybe a group of WLF or Seraphites, or maybe just a piece of rope. Also, there's a bunch of things in the game which you can collect, such as ammo, weapons, and also things that can help you craft things like, you know, grenades, bombs, traps. You can also collect things like manuals, which also allow you to level up your other abilities in game. The game also comes with the ability to level up your skills in combat, survival, crafting, and stealth. Now, The Last of Us 2 mainly works as a stealth game. It's mainly, to me, it seems like the game focuses more on being a stealth game, especially when you play as Ellie. Now, having seen the game played at a harder difficulty, I don't think I'd enjoy the stealth in this game as much. I already hate playing video games with stealth, mainly because I am very impatient when I'm playing video games. I don't like to be waiting around, sitting around, waiting for things to happen, and then whenever I fuck up, I basically die. And then basically fucking up is basically a death wish, and you have to restart that long process over again. And it just feels like you don't really get anything for attempting and failing stealth, but you do get a lot for attempting and failing combat. Because when you fail combat, you can just go back into combat, and the process is very quickly. The action there is very quick. But when it comes to stealth, the action moves so slow, and so it doesn't feel like you're playing a video game. It feels like you're just playing the waiting simulator. And it also feels like stealth is the only way to succeed in-game. So I'm gonna have to give this -1 point. And sometimes I find the leveling system in the game to be very grating to me, because you need to have found a manual to be able to level up. And that's annoying because you could have missed something and boom, that's it. You don't get the level anymore. you don't gain levels from playing the game or being good at a thing. Nope, you gain the leveling from finding specific manuals at a specific point in time, and you can only find them there, and if you miss that, well, sucks. So now for some upgrades, you need to basically make sure you found a specific manual at a specific point in the game, and if you miss that, that sucks. And that sucks because the game is 24 hours long. -1 point. Now, in The Last of Us 2, there's the listening mode feature. I can't really explain it properly, but what it seems to do is kind of deafen out some of the other sounds in the game, and it only makes you focus on footsteps, focusing more on the audio aspect and also some of the sight aspects, which basically allows you to, it will highlight a bunch of enemies that you see, and also, essentially what the game will do is it'll heighten up like the audio, specifically like the game audio, instead of like the music. And it will and another thing the game will do is also highlight any enemies around the area, at least a few of the enemies around the area, I guess, and I think it's very good. I think listening mode is a very cool feature that I think really does take advantage of the stereo aspects of headphones. However, I have no idea how that works in a TV, but I like it nonetheless, so I'm gonna have to give that 2 points. Now, as I mentioned, stealth is an option in the game, but as I mentioned, you can also play aggressively. Now, whilst it's good to have a lot of options to play the game, playing aggressive and trying to always be in combat is almost a death wish in the game, and is basically a waste of resources, because you're always going to be trying to find ammo as much as possible in-game, as much as you can. And sometimes you might not even get ammo back from the enemies you kill. Maybe they don't have ammo, apparently. And also, playing aggressively is such a heavy resource waste in-game. I remember when Tim was even playing as Abby, and it felt like she had lots of ammo. It turned out, he was still wasting the ammo he had when he was playing as her.
Oh, I'm out of ammo! Okay, I can't be wasteful. I thought, since I have a lot of ammo, I could be more liberal with it, but nah, I still gotta save resources.
It works out well for allowing the player to try a new playstyle, but stealth is just so much better because, sure, it takes more time, but you have less resource waste. Playing aggressive just feels so pointless because you're still running out of ammo, even if you're playing as Abby, who's meant to be the combat-focused character, and even then, you can't waste ammo anyways, and so it's just kind of pointless and not really fun. And the only time you ever really have infinite ammo is when you're playing as Ellie and you're in the car with Jesse and you're driving through the WLF, driving through the street, trying to get away from the WLF. So yeah, -1 point. Abby is really fun to play combat-wise because the way she fights is just really fun. It's very fun to watch Abby just beat the shit out of people and just deck them completely, bop, 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 bop here and there. +4 points. I'm not sure if it's because of his gameplay, but I had a severe problem when I was watching Timmy play Last of Us 2, because every time he would switch weapons constantly, every time, to like change tactics and stuff on the fly, and it was kind of annoying. It seems like such a headache to always be constantly switching weapons, and it was even when he still had ammo to be able to fight. So to me, it just came across as really weird. Yeah, there's a lot of time spent switching weapons, so to me, it came across as really weird because it just feels like such a headache to always be constantly switching weapons all the time that I saw from Simi's gameplay. So maybe it's his gameplay, but nonetheless, I'm gonna have to give that -1 point. Whenever you're playing Last of Us 2 and you have an enemy kind of detect you, and they kind of see, and you hide away, the enemy will go and check where you last were, just to see where you were. I mean, this was a thing in Assassin's Creed. So even if you get into combat, then go and hide, and they stop looking for you, they will somewhat still roam in the area in which they last saw you in. And I think this is kind of a cool idea in-game. And now I think this makes stealth somewhat bearable to me because it changes the way enemies move, and at least makes stealth bearable because it changes the pattern they move in. And so it's not in this weird mathematical formula you have to try and figure out the ways, their paths and stuff, which to me just feels so boring. So +1 point. And for my final point, hold on, I'm gonna start the recording. Hold on, give me a second, give me a very quick second. God, +1 point. Now for this next section, we're going to be talking about art design and animation. Now this section basically encompasses anything art related, so like the animation, the design of the game, the actual graphical design of the game, the art style, the way things look in the game, essentially. So The Last of Us Part 2's art design is basically the hyper-realistic art style that we're all used to from AAA titles nowadays. So there's nothing really too spectacular of it. To some people, it looks really cool how detailed everyone's faces look like and almost how they feel like real people. But I'm like, yeah, it's cool, I guess. The one point of animation I can point out is the rope, because I think the rope physics, to me, are very funky cool, in my opinion. Because I like the way how sometimes the rope kind of moves and bounces around in-game, feels and looks very light. And the animation that they had to go through to make that a reality looks really cool, in my opinion. So I'm gonna have to give that 1 point. I also really like how well done the clothing animation is in the game. So I'm also gonna have to give that plus 1 point. Now, I have a problem with some of the map design, or at least some of the design of some of the sets in the game, or some of the places you have combat in, because they look very weird. I get that it's a post-apocalyptic setting in the game, but I have a problem with how some sets are designed. Like, I get it. You want to use a lot of overgrown forest and trees to showcase that, like, oh yeah, this game is set 20 years after now, so obviously everything is all overgrown and stuff. But some of the sets, I can't even tell what the building was supposed to be, or I can barely tell what this building was. Like, there's no semblance of, like, history in this building. Like, I get it. Humanity's history were lost, but, like, I can barely guess what this used to be. Especially when we're playing as Abby in the later parts of the game, when we're on a skyscraper and I can barely tell what the building is. Like, the location just looks awful. I don't know what it is, so I'm gonna have to give that minus 1 point. When we're playing as Ellie and she's going into Seattle with Dina by horseback, you come across a bus stop, and whilst it looks like a bus stop in the middle of a jungle, and I get it, it's overgrown and it's in a street, but to me, it's really, the placement of this bus stop looks really strange to me, because, and I'm assuming it is a bus stop, isn't really strange because we've got a bunch of cars there, which makes me assume, okay, this used to be a road, but I can barely see anywhere where a bus stop should be. Like, this location, like, I don't see any, like, houses nearby or anything that used to be there. It just looks like if you remove the trees, this was just a bus stop in the middle of nowhere, which seems really useless. Now, I don't know if that's a slight to the game or a slight to the American transport system, but I'd have to put this here. Some of the combat animations are really hilarious, especially when you're playing as Ellie, because there are some times where she's, you know, moving around, switching left, right, strafing, and then moving backwards. It honestly looks like Ellie's about to have back problems. You also have moments when you're in close quarters, or moments where you're trying to bandage, which look hilarious, because Ellie is just crouched and hurt. So it looks like she's going to have, like, serious back problems. So I'm gonna have to give that plus 1 point. Final point I'd like to point out is that I found Ellie, whenever she's moving backwards constantly, it looks kind of funny. So most people, they may hate that, but I liked it. So I might have to give 1 point for that. One thing I'd like to point out is that the guitar chords are correct. Now on to the music/sound section. Last of Us musical style seems to have, you know, some kind of old western, like, cowboy music with, like, all the guitars stuff, and that's only a few times, and also the times where we have the characters play guitar. Now then there's music whilst you're playing the game, whilst you're in gameplay, and to say the least, honestly, that's the part where the game is lacking. Most of the music during gameplay is just an orchestral score, or it's just long, drone music, of which the entire time, the music is just long, drone, orchestral scores.
On the left!
Come on. Quickly now. No! Oh, that's Dina. It's Dina. Okay, Dina. Sweet.
The game is very low volume, long, drone, orchestral music, even during combat. And to me, that's just so boring and unexciting. Why not have different music play when people notice you? Other games do this. Why can't Last of Us 2 do this? So it makes it more exciting to be in combat. It's like, oh, the score has remained the same. It hasn't changed. Okay, wow, this is boring. It's like, the game does not change the sound. It's almost like it's designed to be unnoticeable. It's like, why not make the music exciting when I'm fighting? It's like, it doesn't make me happy to be fighting. It makes me more depressed to be fighting. It's like, oh, great, I'm not excited to be playing this video game. How inventive. Yeah, it's just, I'm gonna have to give that -2 points. There's one thing I'd also like to point out that I did like, but also I kinda hate at the same time. So, whenever you kill like a human enemy, sometimes you'll have some of the other enemies around shout out their names to make you give a shit about the random person you just shot.
Ruth! It came from back there!
But whilst that's cool, I don't care. I'm sorry, even if they've given you a name, to me, you're still random NPC number 365, man. I don't care. I'd also like to point out the game makes very good use of the stereo image, even without listening mode on, because I think it's very easy to tell where things are, especially when I was watching Simi's gameplay. I found it very quite easy for me to be able to tell where an enemy was or where I could see things, and so I'm gonna have to give that +2 points. I'd also like to point out is that I think the gun sounds in the game are very terrifying. So I'm gonna have to give a +1 point, because oh my god, the way those guns boom, like they feel like you're going to die. This thing will kill you, okay? When you hear this, you will die. You will be murdered. You will not exist on this planet. You will be absolutely obliterated. Non-existent, destroyed, exterminated, ended, out of this world, deleted, ruined. I'm out of words, sorry. Now for the miscellaneous section. One of the few things I found out about Last of Us 2 was that the developers had crunched very heavily to try and make this game, especially because I think the game was delayed as well, but even still, there was still a lot of crunch involved. And now, maybe I won't have this affect my rating, so I'm gonna have to give it -10 points. It doesn't actually affect the rating in the grand scheme of things, because let's be honest, this doesn't count, this is just me being petty for no reason, but crunch is bad, so -10 points. One also miscellaneous thing I'd like to point out, especially if you're watching Simi's stream, I did not realize how bad that man's aim was.
Alright. Oh, I might... Mate.
Like, I didn't realize how bad his aim was. I haven't seen him play too many FPSs. Like, I've seen him on Fortnite. Okay, that's the amount of Simi's gaming skill I have actually witnessed and have seen in terms of a first-hand experience. I didn't realize he was that terrible at aiming. Hopefully I've counted this correctly, otherwise my voice would be dubbed over with the actual score. But as a total, Last of Us has a score of 3, which is very low because it's almost near the negative, so it's not that great.
So, as I said, mathematically it's 3, but it's actually 5, and I'm here through the power of editing because I've realized, so there are 2 things that I've noticed in the game that I'm gonna have to add, which will affect the score of this review. So for example, within the gameplay of Last of Us 2, you can find letters in-game to use to gain access into safe codes, which contain useful items, such as supplements, or gear, or manuals, or whatever. However, if you don't have a letter to be able to input the correct safe code, there is the ability to crack the safe code by ear, which is something that Simi does do.
Do it by ear. There we go.
It actually worked.
Yeah, I'm not too much of...
So, because of that, I'm going to have to give the game 2 points. So, instead of it being 3, mathematically, it is now a 5. And even though I said 4, yeah, I was wrong, and I'm dumb, and I can't count, and I can't do maths. And I accidentally omitted stuff, so yeah, bye.
Don't get me wrong, The Last of Us Part 2 isn't terrible, but it's very underwhelming for a game that bigs itself up on its story. Now, maybe this is affected by my lack of attachment towards the story, especially because I've never played Part 1, but the game makes me not really care about Ellie at all, and instead it makes me care about Abby way more than I do about Ellie, especially in the end. Ellie, why? Like, I honestly found it ironic how people absolutely hated Abby to the point of even sending death threats to her voice actor, despite the fact that on the opposite end, I hated Ellie, but I really liked Abby, but I didn't send death threats to the voice actor. And honestly, the rating of this game makes sense, because the parts that I do like of this game come from the unintended hilarity of the things that the game did. And honestly, do you really think that should make a game good? Do you honestly think that? Like, Ellie wimped out on killing Abby the first time, despite the fact that she got a ridiculous KD ratio. Like, she acquired the most ridiculous KD ratio I've ever seen, okay? Killer Lily 17 would be disgusted with her. That is a joke no one will understand except me and except a hyper-specific group of people. If you do, I give you props. And not to mention, her KD ratio also includes a dog and a pregnant woman. And Ellie decides to go for it again, despite now losing everything, including her child and her wife, basically, and even losing her fingers, basically rendering her useless at playing guitar. And you know the funniest part of everything that Ellie did out of all of that? She ended up unintentionally saving the person she was trying to kill all along. It's kind of funny when you think about it. She basically unintentionally saved Abby. I think that's it for The Last of Us Part 2 review, and hopefully you enjoyed the first episode of Backseat Gaming Reviews, and hopefully there'll be another video for you guys to enjoy, and hopefully another game that will hopefully be controversial as Last of Us Part 2. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy that. The Last of Us 2 is definitely a fun game to watch, but I think I definitely get very bored playing it very easily, mostly because I don't like stealth. The Last of Us 2 would probably be a fun game for me to play, or at least attempt to play, but unfortunately it's a PlayStation exclusive, so yeah, I don't think I can play it, and I don't think I would want to play it. So unfortunately, and to conclude this episode, well, you fell off, L plus ratio, Halo better. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the Unverified channel for more Backseat Gaming Reviews. I'd like to give a thank you to Simi for lending me his camera, and also for lending me his gameplay. And yeah, so feel free to like and subscribe to this video, and hopefully, you know, there'll be more of this, and there'll be more games. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to suggest more games down in the comments below. And feel free to share this video around, I guess, because this is a fun idea, and, you know, I want more games to review that I've never played before, or more games to watch. So, yeah. Feel free to like, subscribe, and I'll be seeing you next time.
Internet friends, I think I'll play with my internet friends. I don't have to speak, I got internet friends. If they are online and you talk in the thread, I'll still treat them like they're my real friends. It's crazy.
Hi, Izzy here from the editing bay, just to tell you a few things whilst my song plays. To clear up any confusion, this is not an unverified video. This was originally planned to be one, but due to life, the video remained unedited. I decided to take the Herculean task of editing this video myself throughout the month of May. The video was actually recorded in late November of 2021. The only reason I decided to just edit the video myself was because I already went through the effort of getting the camera, recording, then returning the camera, to which again, thank you Simi. Next up on the Izzy channel is uncertainty, because I am completely uncertain if there will be a next upload here soon. Like I always falsely promise, it's most likely going to be a Twitch highlight video. I don't have any content plans anytime soon on this channel, unfortunately. This second channel's existence was entirely to have content that would either feed into another piece of content or be fed by said piece of content. However, life has happened, and so there's not much of an incentive to make videos here anymore. I'll still be streaming on Twitch, so feel free to check that out in the meantime in the link below. Now, back to the credits.
I'll still treat them like they're my real friends. Me and my friends party, we go into hotels, grab a couple drinks and dance and go down. I'm talking about how about couldn't you tell? I got an avatar to exaggerate myself. You won't believe this, you won't believe that. I made friends with penguins, I've made friends with mice. That was transform mice, so club penguins, ice, relax and boom bang, that was paradise.